Okay, so first off, we're up here at the Lost Josephine Mine with Gary Holt, but I got Quinn, who we did a story with on a guy who his grandfather knew where a silver mine was in Mexico, and we was looking for people. Well, we got the right people, the people that knew the people in the town, that knew the town that, and Quinn went on that trip. So tell me your version of what happened on this trip, Quinn. The whole story, the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Hit it.
How long of a tape do you have?
I got 6 hours.
Well, back in 2002, my buddy Paul was telling me about this family that he grew up with that has this Spanish mine in Mexico. And I talked about all the things that come out of it and how they had a steam engine down there. It had been in the family for like 150 years, and they were there during it was going really strong before the Mexican Revolution, but in 1907 or 10 or whenever that all happened, they stopped producing out of there. And I guess the owner of the mine, the grandfather of the people, great-grandfather, whoever, I guess he was a general in the Mexican army, and I'm not sure the whole details after the army or not, but he never got back in there to work it. So his son started working it, and I don't know all the dates and everything. I forget the dates, but he stopped working it in 1987 from what I hear, and because he was having a lot of problems with the cartel coming in and stealing his fuel and bumming this and bumming that. They didn't really give him problems, or they were just kind of taking everything from him. And they had a steam engine down in there that they had packed in. They had a mining company, and Paul knows all of this a lot better than me. And they went in there and they started getting it going. And one thing after another, just after they got it going, I guess the cartel came in there and took about 10 or 12 of their workers hostages. And they wanted all this ransom for them. I think it was like $50,000, but today would be like $2 million. And so I don't know what they finally agreed on, but they paid part of the ransom and they got the men back, and they thought, you know what, heck with this. We're not going to go through this again. So, but apparently they had thought enough of it for them to invest a lot of money and the steam engine, and like I say, I don't know all of the details like my buddy Paul, but we hiked down there and saw the steam engine, so I know that was a true story. But anyway, in 2002, I just couldn't get off work, and he went there and saw some things. He found the mine for the people. Great family. I got to meet them, and they weren't sure where it even was because just their father had worked it, and the older lady's husband. And they had mines over in Socorro and different places in Arizona, but she wanted to get this going. So Paul went in 2002 when I couldn't go, and he found the mine, found a lot of mines. We went to Deblom, Mexico, and then we went through some other little towns, Casas Grandes, and then we went to another little town. And when we first went up there, Paul knew where it was, but he hadn't been there for quite a few years, and so we were going there, and we thought we would take a shortcut instead of driving a whole lot of miles around the mountain. We thought we'd drive up over the mountain, and so we got up to about the top of the mountain, and all of a sudden here comes this blazer full of these big Mexicans, and on the dash we saw AK-47s, and on the back, two guys in the back, they had their AK-47s, and they stopped and exchanged words, and I guess it was kind of like, what the heck are you doing here? Who are you? What is your business? And they were pretty upset because I guess a week before they had a shootout with the rival gang. They killed 12 of their members, and they killed 5 of theirs, and here we are caught in the middle of it, and I'm sitting in the back going, oh my gosh. But Paul, he has a lot of experience with people like this, and he's a talker, and he started talking to him and being friendly, and he's a really friendly guy. Everybody loves Paul. And he mentioned a couple of names. I guess one of his good friends, his son was kind of mixed up with him a little bit, and so they're like, oh, you know him? Oh yeah, he's blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden there was a bond. And they just started BSing, and I didn't know what the heck they were saying. And I was like, let's just get out of here. Do I run for it or what, you know? Because all the stories you hear. And we had a big old bag of pecans. We gave them a bag of pecans. Oh, they just loved pecans, and so they were passing them around, and the guys in the back, they were just smiling. And God, this one guy, the driver, I swear his head was this big. He was the biggest guy I'd ever seen in my life. And his teeth were like great big old chiclets, you know. He'd smile, and boy, at first he was mean, and he was like, oh. And then when he started smiling, I felt like, oh, he was my best friend. He was just super, super cool. But we talked for a few minutes. Then he said that you guys just go ahead. We'll radio ahead and let the other vehicle know that you guys are cool. They won't give you no problem. Okay. So we drove and drove and drove, and we got mixed up a little bit because since then there was a big fire and there was all kinds of fire roads in there. So we got lost 3 or 4 times. Oh yeah, this is the road, and we take it till it dead end. Oh, this doesn't look familiar, so we come back. But you know, the whole time I was seeing beautiful, beautiful country. And finally, after about 3-4 hours, we just like, we better go back in and see if we can find the guy that has the ranch down at the bottom of the road, and see if he's available. Maybe he can give us direction. So we drove back, and he wasn't around, but his son, we picked him up, and he said, yeah, he was coming back on a mule. And so he took it and figured, well, I got other donkeys and things back at the ranch there. I'll just take it and throw my saddle in the back. And so he jumped in, and we took off, and we got a couple of miles out of town. Here comes his father, Martine. And we told him what was going on. He's like, my son's not the one. I'm the one to go. And so he was like, yeah, but nobody had been down this road since Paul, probably. Maybe a couple of years before that. Paul said some friends of his went down there. But either way, when we started going back down there, it started getting dark, and boy, the road hadn't been cleared. Nobody had been on this road for years and years, and there were rocks everywhere. And so as it was getting dark, we were all out of the truck, all except Scott. We were rolling these rocks out of the way so his brother, Mike, could bring his really nice Toyota Tundra down the mountain. Then it started getting later and later, and you know, we had the headlights on and we're rolling these rocks. Sometimes we had to get these bars and roll them out of the way, and then all of a sudden there was a big old log stuck across the road, and we tried to clear it out the best we could. And as after he ran through it, all of a sudden I hear this pop, and I hear this, and I looked up front, and the sidewall had about an inch gap in it, and we were losing air. And we're like, it's like 10 o'clock at night, you know, and we're all tired and exhausted. So we took it and then had to unload the truck with all of our gear and everything, and get the spare tire. And they jacked up the tire, took the tire off. We got this tire and tried to get it on there, and tried to get it on there, and tried to get it on there. Well, we found out later it was mounted on a Ford rim,
wrong size rim.
And it does not fit a Toyota Puck.
Different bulk.
It was too small, and so it wouldn't fit. We're all like, really? And apparently Mike's brother, or Paul's brother Mike, he has a shop that he's co-owner with, and his partner was the one that mounted the tires for him. So he was pissed off, like, oh, wait till I get back, I'm gonna give him hell, you know. And so in the meantime, we got the old crank, and we cranked down the old spare tire, but it was a small tire. At least it wasn't a donut tire. And he never had it checked, and we put it on, and it was only like half the poundage that it should be. So when we put it on, it was a smaller tire, and you know what that is on a 4-wheel drive, you know, it's kind of off balance and everything. Well, it looked like it was almost flat, but it was like, oh, we'll make it. So we rolled rocks for another couple hours. I think we got into the ranch house about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, it was constant rolling rocks, and we were exhausted. And we get into camp there, and we kind of hurry and make something to eat. We were all starving, so we got down to Martine's ranch there, and he had some burros in there, and the donkeys, and it was like, oh, cool, you know, and so we took it and made camp after we ate, and by then it's probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were all exhausted. So we just laid our bedrolls out on the ground and went to sleep. And a couple of guys, they didn't want to sleep on the ground because of all the bugs and everything, so they slept in the truck. I don't know how you can sleep in a truck, but they just slept in the truck. And early the next morning we got up and had breakfast, tortillas, 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 tortillas. It's like, God, I've eaten more tortillas in a week than I have my whole life. But it was good. It's really good, and really good food and really good company. And so we finally got going about 9:30, 10 o'clock. We thought, well, we'll just go up here and keep rolling rocks on the road and see, you know, because the road got us up to the top. So we walked about, maybe a mile. God, there was bigger rocks and bigger rocks. And finally we were barring these things up and trying to put rocks underneath it and barring, you know, and putting more rocks in it. And all of a sudden we walked around the corner and here's the whole half the hillside. And we thought, oh man, we need a dozer. We need something to push. We can't do this. So old Mike, he had to do like a 10-point turnaround because it was a big old cliff that went down the side there, and the road and the hillside was, so he was like, oh my gosh, and he's getting this far from the side, and I'm like, oh, this is all we need, this truck to slide off. And like I say, we got down to the ranch, and the next day we started going up. We couldn't hit the road was too messed up, and so we went back to the to Martine's ranch, and he had a burro that was kind of half trained. And so we took and loaded everything up on the burro, but we had our packs with all of our water and food and stuff because we were going to be there for a day, you know. And so climbing out, we didn't take the road because the road was a lot longer. We just took this switchback up this hill. And oh my gosh, it's like one of these type of hills, you know. It's like, and we got up to the top, and oh boy. Mike, Mike's getting a little old. He's 73. He's got some bad knees, and he was struggling. And Scott, he wasn't used to this. He wasn't in shape at all, and he was really struggling. And Paul and I, we were all excited, and you know, it was hot, but we did good, and we got going again, and we got a little ways further, and got to the top, and they made it to the top, which was about 1/8 of the way, maybe a little more than that. And sat down, and these two guys, they were just ready to die. So we took a little break and got hydrated and got going, and well, when we first took off, I figured, you know, it's only a couple hours is what they said. So I only brought a couple of bottles of water, and I had one bottle in my hand, and Paul said he had 4 gallons, but I don't see how a 2/5 can be 4 gallons, but that's up to you, Paul. I mean,
2/5 is 4 gallons.
He might have had 3, but anyway, you know, we got going, and his brother's like, oh, we'll be okay. We got going. It's like, God, I don't have enough water. Oh, you'll be okay. It's only a couple hour hike, and we'll be there before you know it. And we had no idea where Scott was taking us, and we put it in our GPS, and Martine, he kind of had an idea, our guide, where it was. And so we get up there and we start going down, and nobody had been on this trail for years. And I'll tell you, this Martine guy, this Mexican guide, he is a trooper. He was pulling the donkey, and Paul's brother, Mike, gave him a machete, a brand new machete. And so he was slashing the brush and trying to find the trail and pulling this stubborn old donkey, and you know, and slashing, and boy, this guy did that all the way there and all the way back. And we got going down the ways, and we started going around this canyon, and Paul and I and Martine, we were clear around this other side of the canyon, and we could see his brother, and his brother's like, hey, Scott and I, we can't make it, man. We're just, we can't do it. We're going to stay right here. And Paul's like, what? Come on. And I'm like, well, you got the water. He goes, oh. And Paul's like, oh, we just, you know, it's just a little ways further. Didn't you say that, Paul? It's just a little ways further. And so I figured, you know, I had a little bottle, a little water left, and heck, I had a dehydration in my pack. Not a dehydration, a filtration system, because I didn't dare drink the water. He says, oh, you drink the water, you're going to have the Montezuma's revenge, and you're going to be miserable. So anyway, we passed a couple of springs, and you know, to me they weren't springs, they were just little mud holes, you know. But Paul was kind of after me because, you know, I guess halfway up the 20 yards up the mountain, I could have went up there and got some more water. But you know, I didn't say anything. I figured we were getting close. And so anyway, Scott and Mike, they turned back and they went up on top, and we found out later on that they were too exhausted to even go back to camp that night.
Too what?
Too exhausted.
Oh.
They just found a tree, and it was so leafy and dry that they didn't even make a fire. They didn't dare make a fire. I mean, it was drier than dry. So they just stayed all night long, and I guess they huddled around a tree and put up with they didn't sleep at all, but the next day they finally was able to make it back to camp. Well, Paul and I and Martine, we're still trooping along, looking at the GPS, trying to find this, supposed to have had this cliff face, and we had the GPS coordinates, and God, we're getting close, and it's like within 100 feet, and so we're looking down in this really rough, I mean, stupid me, I wore short pants because I wanted to tan my white legs, and I was just cut up and bleedy, and my arms, and Paul told me, he said, don't wear pants, and I thought, well, you know, it's a good time. There's no one out here to see my white legs, I'll be okay, you know. Oh, God. So anyway, we looked and we looked and we looked, and we took that GPS right to where it was, and instead of a white face, which they thought was, I think, it was a conglomerate boulder. It was just a conglomerate boulder full of all kinds of different rocks that had just melded together, and it was no face at all. And the waterfall that they thought was a waterfall, well, after we found out that there was no material around there that would even have gold or silver or anything in it, we went right down to the bottom, and the whole bottom was nothing but beautiful granite. This beautiful green, blue granite. Paul, I think it was green granite. Paul's the mason, he knows all about that stuff, and he was like, oh, he see dollar signs, and he's like, I could cut this up and sell this for all this money, but that's what they saw from Google Earth. It looked like a waterfall, but all it was
green granite.
It was just granite all the way. The water, when it rained, the water just washed everything off, and it was just granite all the way down. So it was like, really? So we took it and went down there and hiked down to the bottom, and during the way down we came across some exploratory mines that some mining company had done, and boy, there was silver and gold and copper, just beautiful colors. They only went back in about 4 feet, but the beautiful colors. And but just we started running into the mineralization. Then we got down a little bit lower, and a lot of mineralization. Finally we got down, and it was getting really late, and we found the pump, the steam engine that was sitting there. So we took some pictures, but we hear the water, but we couldn't get to it because it was clear down this steep face from what I hear. And I was like, I need some water, Paul. And he's like, well, I'm out of water too. And it's like, and everybody was kind of like getting, you know, and getting tired and dehydrated. And so Martine had lost the trail, so he said, I'll be back. And so he took it and was gone for a little bit, and Paul and I are taking pictures and kind of checking everything out, checking the rocks, and then Martine comes back, so I found the trail. So we took off, and again, you know, he was slashing and slashing and slashing, and Paul's like, see that mountainside over there? We have to go 3 more freaking ridges. We're out of water. And he was getting ornery, and he was getting dehydrated, and I was getting dehydrated, but I didn't want to mess with Paul. He's a big boy. And it was like, yeah. So we kept hiking and hiking and hiking and going up and down and in and out of these valleys. And he's like, oh, God, you know, And anyway, Paul was kind of losing it, weren't you, Paul? He was swearing, and I was just kind of like, you know, just trying to hold on. I mean, I wasn't in any better shape, but we got to a point where it was like, oh my gosh. And then Martine's like, I can't find the trail. I'll be back when I find the trail. And boy, old Paul, he just laid down, and he didn't even take his pack off. He just crashed. And I was about doing the same thing. I was like exhausted, and I was really thirsty because I only had like 3 bottles of water, and Paul had 4 gallons, you know, and sorry, Paul, but you deserve that one, man. But anyway, we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this is life or death situation here. It was bad. And I remembered I had a can of peaches in my backpack, and I thought, yeah, juice, you know, sweet juice. So I went over and got this can of peaches about 10 minutes later, and went over to Paul. Hey, Paul, I got some peach juice. You go ahead and drink it. I said, no, you drink it. You're out of it. Go, 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 drink it. So he drank half the can, and I drank half the can, and I'm like, here, have some peaches. And by then, Martine comes back and says, oh, I found the trail. And all of a sudden, boy, old Paul, he was like Ricochet Rabbit, and he's like, go, 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 go. Well, in the meantime, I had taken my clothes out of my pack, trying to get down to the bottom. I'm not really sure what else I took out. But all of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, those guys are leaving, you know. So I just kind of zipped my pack up and clamped it and threw it on. And later that night, I found out, oh, my underwear, my socks, my pants, my long pants, my shirt, and some other things I left on that hillside. So finally, we get back into camp. We got into camp, and we were able to eat, and it was really nice. The stream, beautiful little stream there. I was able to filter some water, and boy, I slammed a couple of bottles of water, and everybody's happy, and we ate and got full, and went to sleep that night, and got up the next morning, and again we had breakfast, you know, carne asada, had all these flank steaks, and boy, Paul's a heck of a cook, and Martine's a heck of a cook, and boy, we ate really well, and we got going, and he's like, well, the mine's just right over here, and it's like, well, right there, it's just right over the stream here and just up a little ways. So we took it and crossed the stream, and God, there were mines everywhere. It was like, holy crap. And he's like, oh yeah, this has been mined for 150 years, you know. And we come by this one, and here's a mine that was all rocked up. And up on top was all these tailings, and I'm like, wow, now that is impressive. I've never seen a concealed mine, but it wasn't really concealed, but you know, they just didn't want anybody to go in there. And so anyway, we walked around the corner, and first time Paul walked right by it, and he's like, it's right here someplace. But, you know, it had been a few years since he'd been there, 8 years, I guess, you know. And so he kind of looked around a little bit, and he hiked up this little ledge. Oh, here it is. And we walked in there, and oh my gosh, you kind of had to do this when you got to go in, but when you got in, it was just massive. It was just massive. It was beautiful. You could see all the wooden ladders and all of the old things that they had used, but they had all rotted up, you know. And guy took my light and shined it up on the ceiling, and it looked like the Milky Way. It was just clear full of silver, clear full of silver. And it was crazy. It was a silver mine that had been in the family all these years. And so we walked a little ways further, and we knew about this shaft. It's about 8 foot by 8 foot, and it goes down a little over 100 feet, but it was full of water. And so apparently you drain that water out, from what I hear. I hope I can say this, but down at the bottom of the shaft, it's supposed to have 2 tunnels that go, and they were looking for the bottom of this silver deposit. Apparently it's a massive silver deposit there, and they were mining this and taking the good stuff out, and even the rocks that they brought out, the rocks are just like, I mean, heavier than heck. Probably, Paul says around 80% silver, so I don't know. You know, we're having it assayed right now, and but it was all over the place, all over the place. There was a little tiny ledge that you could walk up and get up on top, and they had a tunnel that went like 300 or 400 yards back in there, and you go back in there a little ways, and there was there used to be a silver cross with some kind of emeralds and things on it. You could see it. It was carved into the wall, and it used to be a silver cross, but someone has taken it out. I don't know who took it, or if it was in the family or what, but it's gone. But I was still kind of recovering from dehydration, and once you climbed up this little ledge, if I got dizzy or anything and fell, I would have fallen in the shaft, or I would have fallen 15 feet and broke. I mean, it was just solid rock. So I'm just like, I kicked myself now, but I wussed out. I didn't go up there, but it was like, now I went all that way and I didn't go up there. But Paul climbed up there. He'd been up there before, but he went a little bit further, and he was gone for a while, and all of a sudden here comes these bats flying out, you know, and hey Paul, you okay? And he, you know, and I don't know how far he went. He says he went a couple of 100 yards in there, but you know, he was gone about 5 minutes. So you know, that's but it went way back in there, and he says there was all kinds of silver everywhere. But we didn't have a chisel or anything. I just had a rock hammer, and we couldn't even beat anything out with a rock hammer. So he come back down, and we got some samples, and we walked out, and we wanted to take it and go over a little bit further, but we didn't have enough time. A couple of ridges over, there was supposed to be this old Jesuit church that had been burnt, and things put in it and burnt, and see, I don't know if I should be saying this or not, but but you know, there's supposed to be some kind of a treasure there. And funny thing is when we were walking down over across the valley, right above where our mine was, here's this big old crop of marijuana. Oh. And it had to have been 100 yards wide and probably 400 yards long. And you could see people in it working it. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I started getting scared, thinking, oh my gosh. And he's like, they're not going to bother us. They don't want to come. They don't want to do anything with this. You know, they have to work for this stuff. They're up there doing their own thing. And like they said, you know, when we saw those cartel up on the mountain, you haven't seen us. We haven't seen you. Everything's cool. And that's right. So, and he's, you know, he's kind of like, yeah, don't worry about it. You know, they know that we're here, and they're not interested in this mining stuff. They're all interested in their drugs and whatever they do, you know.
Green gold.
Yeah, green gold. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time there. We took some pictures, and we wanted to go a little bit further, because around this last ridge was probably 2 miles away. There's back into the mountainside. You can see where the mountain was like sheer cliffs, and back in there, there's like 6 smelters. And I've seen the pictures of these smelters. I mean, just beautiful smelters, still in great shape, and you know, they've been used for a long time. I wanted to see them, get a picture, but we had to get back, because everybody had to get back to the States. So it was like, really, we come all this way and we're here for overnight and that's it? And we didn't realize that Scott had to be back and Mike had to be back. They both have practices, you know, and their businesses. And it was like, oh my gosh. So we hiked out and got up on top there. And funny thing is, the mule, it was so grateful that the mule carried my pack. The mule, or not the mule, but the donkey carried Paul's pack. That poor donkey carried everything. Plus, as we were going out, Paul held onto his tail, and it pulled Paul all the way up out of that mountain. I didn't dare. I don't trust him. I was afraid I was going to get kicked or something, but he kind of had a 4-wheel drive help him out. And Martine, he was a trooper. He had to take it and, you know, slash his way through all of and pull that dang donkey, and, you know, and it didn't want to go. And he's pulling and slashing and pulling and cussing. I'm sure that's what those words were. But he was slashing, and finally we get up on top, and we're like, we hope the guys got back to camp okay. And we get up on top there, and we take a little break, and I was exhausted, but I had water. But I was still kind of recovering from the day before. We all were, actually. So we sat down for about a half an hour, and it was hot. It was like 100, 105, and we found a little shade tree. And when we thought we got recouped and everything, we started going, and it was just pretty short distance. And they said, we're just going right up here is the road. We're just going to kind of follow the road, and you know, camp's not too far away. So I didn't think much of it, so I kind of sat back there. I stepped on my shoelace and untied it, so I kind of tied my shoelace up, and then I stood up real fast, and I got dizzy. I was like, oh my gosh. Started getting this vertigo thing, so I sat down for a couple of minutes and drank some water, and I was like, oh, those guys are gone. I better get going. So I got up, and I knew that they said they had to get up on the road and go. So I just kind of walked up, and they kind of took a little shortcut up to the road. I walked up to the road and then got going down, but I wasn't sure if they were going to go that way or this way. So of course, I went the wrong way for the first little bit. I went about 50 yards, and I could see a whole long ways on the road. And it was like, no, they're not this way. So I turned around, started walking the other way, and I got 100 yards, 200 yards, and here comes the Martine up over the hill. He was like, oh my gosh, you know, Quinn's lost, and no, I'm just running a little late here. So he's like, over here. So we go down the hill there, and he's laying down underneath the tree and taking it easy, and so everything was cool. He kind of gave me hell for being lost, but Paul, I wasn't freaking lost, dude. So stop telling everybody I was freaking lost. You know, it pisses me off, you know. You're my buddy, I can tell you this shit. Plus, Terry can censor some of this stuff too.
You want 140,000 people to hear that kind of slang?
Yeah, I think you're up to 250 now, aren't you, or something like that. But anyway, we started walking down the ways, and then we took a shortcut. Instead of taking the road all the way around the mountain, we just started zigzagging down this other mountain, and after a while, Martine just took the rope. It wasn't even a reined donkey. It was just pulling by a rope, had around his nose, and he just wrapped the cord around the donkey, and the donkey just took off. Donkey knew where he was going, and I was like, "God, your donkey's getting loose. My pack's on there," and he just took off, went right back to camp, and we just kind of nice and easy and took our time. We got back to camp, and there was Scott, and there was Mike, and everybody was there, and they were kind of fussing with the tire and trying to fix the tire, and so we sat there and got reacquainted and told everybody about what happened and what we saw and how exciting it was. And
All about Paul getting the metal plates in it.
that's coming up. We haven't gotten there yet.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So anyway, we sat there and had lunch for a little bit, and we started packing everything up, and just as we started to leave, here comes this big old dark cloud, and then for about 20 minutes it just hailed and rained like crazy. And it was like, oh my gosh, don't worry about it, it's all rocky road, and we won't have no problem getting out. So we drove about a mile, and all of a sudden we come upon our first steep spot. And I was thinking when we went down there, how in the heck are we going to get out of here? I mean, it was steep, man. It was rocky, and it was like, oh my gosh, my truck, I don't think I would have been able to get out. Oh yeah, there's a lot of rock, but it was a lot of loose rock too. So the first hard hill that we came to, we tried it, and the road was wet, and the rocks was wet, and the dirt was wet, and we couldn't make it, so we backed back down. And Paul's like, oh, you're gonna have to go faster. So, you know, he had it in 4 low, so he went a little faster, but he stayed in the same tracks, and he just kind of spun out, and so we had to back down again. And Paul's like, you gotta really give it hell. Come on, stomp on it, let's go, you can make it. And I'm like, don't go that fast on these rocks, you don't want to get bouncing. Oh, we'll be okay. Remember me saying that, Paul? They took off, and he just gave it hell, and boom, boom, snap. And all of a sudden, he starts sliding down the mountain, and I'm thinking, and it was wet, you know, and I'm like, oh, and I don't know what Mike was thinking, but he just about went off the cliff. That left rear tire was like this far from going off a cliff full of, you know, it was a steep cliff, but it had trees and stuff, but we would have been SOL. So we stopped, and we looked underneath the front, and here's all this fluid and everything driving it. Oh, it's like, oh, we broke it. And we were stuck. We tried to move. He had rear wheel drive, but by then, you know, we were screwed. So Paul's like, oh, we're gonna have to go. We gotta go. We're gonna have to hike out and get some help. So Paul and Martine, they took some water and loaded up their packs, and away they go. And I'll tell you, they were troopers. I give you that, Paul, because you guys hiked your butt off that night. And during the night, I guess another rainstorm come up where they were, and it drenched them, and they got wet. And after about 4 or 5 hours of hiking out of this steep old canyon, it was probably 8-10 miles going out of here. They started getting cold, and they thought, well, we better rest a little bit. Well, God, they had just come 10 miles out of the canyon, you know. I don't know how he did it. And either one of them did it. So they huddled around a tree, and they made a little fire, and they stayed there till morning. And then supposedly they hiked out 40 miles, but I don't know. I wasn't there. But they got some help. I think they finally got some self-service, and they called somebody, and someone came and got them. But so I don't know, I wasn't there, but it's a good story. So then they had to spend a day trying to find somebody. They tried to look for the Forest Service and somebody, and And anyway, Paul will have to tell you that story. It's too complicated for me. They had to go from one place to another place to another place to find somebody with something big enough to pull this truck out of this big old steep canyon. And all the cats, they were 60 miles away up in the mountains doing work, and he finally found a company that had a backhoe, big four-wheel drive backhoe that could do it, but you know, he wouldn't be able to be free until tomorrow. So they took it and hired an operator and a truck driver, and they went back to Martine's house, and they took it and had a good meal and everything. And the next day they met these guys, and they brought them up a certain way where they could take it and unload the I think it was a 420 backhoe, pretty nice backhoe. And in the meantime, Paul was concerned about us because we didn't have much water left and food, and so Martine had a son, and he sent him on a motorcycle with a bunch of water and some food, beans and tortillas, and of course tortillas, and he took off, and he could get there a lot faster. And it was about noon, 1 o'clock or so, maybe 11 o'clock around noon sometime, and all of a sudden we hear this motorcycle coming, and he comes, and he couldn't make it. He was afraid to come down this last steep hill, so he just left the bike there, and he hiked down about a mile to where we were. And he was a godsend. We had a little bit of water left, but you know, we were kind of rationing quite a bit, and we had plenty of food. But you know, Paul didn't know, and so it was a good thing that he was thinking of us. And but about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, here comes the backhoe. So they come down the hill, and it had Martine, and it had Paul, and the operator, and the truck driver in it. And they come down, and you know, happy to see everybody, happy, hug, and you know, talked and BS'd for a little bit. And they started looking over the situation, and they thought, well, he'll take it and back down in, and he'll load up his bucket full of rocks so he can take and keep the front end down. And as soon as he started pulling the truck, that backhoe started doing this number, and it was like, oh, this ain't gonna work, you know, I'm not gonna tip over my backhoe. And so they took it and turned around and come down and hooked onto the bucket and was trying to pull us up, and they got us going, and old Mike, Paul kept telling him, you got to spin the wheels, help him out, he can't do all the work, go. And I'm like, God, you're going to burn up your tires, you're not doing any good. Oh, he's got to help. So he's spinning these tires on these rocks, and you can smell the rubber, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say nothing. So we get going, and then all of a sudden we get to a steeper place. Well, we couldn't do it. As the backhoe was pulling us, he was starting to bounce and starting getting near to the cliff side of the road, so we'd have to stop and come up and rehook and get maneuvered again, and boom, he starts sliding off the road, and finally he got the idea of taking the bucket and moving the bucket back, so that would pull us up a couple of feet, you know, and then he would take it and stop, back up, do the bucket, and it was like, oh my God, we're gonna be here all day. After a little bit of that, he's like, you know what, this ain't working. So then he got smart and took the boom and the bucket and just, and then we'd go up 5 feet. Right. You know, it was like, yeah, it was just like fishing, you know. That's right. It was just kind of like a fishing motion. And God, we did that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles, up and down. But the bad thing is there was a lot of tight switchbacks like this. And every time we got to a switchback, God, it took us like 5 or 6 times to have to rehook and rechain and pull us up a little bit, because it was pulling him right into the hillsides, you know. It was just, and so we'd have to pull him a little bit, unchain, pull him a little bit, and oh my God, that's what took all the time, was all these 10 or 15 switchbacks that we had to go around. But eventually we got up to the top, and you know, we started looking at his rear tires, and God, you could see the steel cords showing, and you know, no spares. The spare that we had didn't work, and so anyway, we finally got up to the road, and we took off, and we were just keeping our fingers crossed that we could get into, because there, Martine, where he lived, he had a friend or a cousin or somebody that had like a tire business that he could, you know, help out and do something with. Well, God, we got there about 11 o'clock at night, and he called them up, and oh, they were so happy to help. They were good. They were about ready to go to bed. They come out, and we took the spare off and took it over, and the only good spare we had, the hole was too small, so Paul asked if they had a grinder. So yeah, we got a grinder. So we have these flashlights that we're holding down there, and Paul's got this grinder, and he's just, without any kind of protection, he's just, you know, and we're all tired and desperate, and Paul, he just, it probably took him 2 hours, but he had to grind probably a ½ inch off that rim just next to the lug holes, and it was like really tight. But during the meantime, I guess all the shavings and things, he didn't say much about it, but the next morning he was like, God, I think I got some shavings in my eye. And boy, his eye was just swollen and red, and I was feeling for him. It was like, God, you know, and they didn't have any safety goggles or glasses or anything, and sunglasses or something would have been good, but you know, just in such a hurry and go. And so anyway, he suffered that for a while, and that next night we finally made it back to the house, and well, actually we got back to Mike's brother's house, Eric, and we got in there and we got a shower and got things organized. We washed clothes, and we went over and reported over to the family and let them know what was going on and everything, and they were like, Paul, what's wrong with your eye? Well, I got shavings in it. So they went and got this magnet, and they stuck it next to Paul's eye, and it pulled out a whole bunch of shavings on this magnet. And he's like, oh my gosh, you know, but of course it doesn't get them all. And so it took a couple of days, and then his eye was, you know, rejecting them, and it was kind of covered with pus. He'd wipe his eye and he'd have this big old pus ball, and here's this shaving in his eye, you know, and the body just has a way of healing itself. It's just, it's amazing. But it was a real good time, and later that night, it was an educational time.
That's a good word.
Yeah,
that's a
Yeah, it was educational.
Good time. I wouldn't call it a good time.
But I think the highlight for me is I've had this 2-box cache finder for like 10, 12 years, and I've never found anything with it. It doesn't pick up gold nuggets or keys or anything. It just picks up big things.
Big size of a pop can.
Yeah, it's got to be big, and it's got to be solid. And well, they have this 1620. They called it Jesuit convent that's on the outside of town, and all there is left is one big adobe wall that still stands. You can see the windows, and it was like, oh yeah, I'd like to go see that. They said, well, the metal detectors people have been there all over the place. You can see the holes they dug everywhere. But you guys got deep metal detectors. I bought a TM808, so it's, and so we had 2 of them, and so we get over there, and they wanted us to metal detect over there. So we went over there, and we spent a little time metal detecting, and we walked in the back, and Paul's out there scanning, and I come behind him with my 2-box, and yank, 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 and I got something. Oh, no, you don't. I just went over that area. And I'm like, yank, yank. I got something here. Come back here. So he comes back with my other metal detector, and nothing. So he adjusted the sensitivity. Yank, yank. Oh, God, I had it set wrong, you know, and it was new to both of us, you know. And so I went back and got a shovel, and we dug down and got our little pinpointers out, and God, we were picking up all kinds of slag and stuff, and it was just going crazy. And then all of a sudden Paul hits this thing with the shovel, and here's what you found, and pulls it up and hands it over to me. And God, it's a big old thing of silver, I think. I don't know. We're going to have it. It looked like it had, Paul thinks that maybe they had it in a crucible, and they had spilled the crucible onto the ground, and it kind of splattered out and kind of puddled up. And he thought that maybe the slave didn't want to get caught, so he just kind of, you know, kicked some dirt over it. He didn't want to get beat, you know, or killed or whatever, and so he just went about his business. And so, I don't know, either way, you know, that sucker's been buried there for, who knows, a couple 100 years, maybe 100 years, I don't know.
Paul said, Quinn's no longer a virgin.
Yeah. Well, he said something else, but it was kind of like that. But it was like, yeah, my 2-box does work, Gary. we were kind of wondering last year up here, wasn't getting anything, and sometimes I went over a shovel and wouldn't even pick up a shovel head, and I was like, what? Well, I just have to keep adjusting it, and it's old and it's bounced around, and Paul took it to Mexico once, and I don't know, maybe if it was in the back of his truck, it bounced around for 8 hours, but something's loose with it. But it still works as long as you keep testing it, you know. But we found that, and then apparently right underneath it, but we found a whole plastic bag full of slag stuff that was also what we hope is silver. I don't know Paul thinks it's silver. And so anyway, that was exciting. There's still something that the metal detectors are hitting deeper down, but we didn't have time. The ground was harder than rock. All we had were our dress shoes and, you know, no gloves. Or me, I had to have gloves. My hands are so soft, so city. You know, I'm a truck driver, you know. And so we thought, well, we'll just cover this up and we'll come back next time and we'll dig this out. So as we're walking around the end of this adobe wall, my metal detector goes off and for about 6 feet. And I'm like, holy crap. Walked back, turned back, about 6 feet long, and I got to the side, and about 4 feet it was going off. So something big is down there below where all these other metal detectors haven't been able to hit. But the ground was so it was so hard and full of rocks, and we just didn't have time to get it. So that will be one of our next finds next time we go up there. Leela, well, she's married now. I'm not sure what her last name is, but Leela, she's thinking that maybe it could be a big old cross. It could be maybe anything, you know, anything. Yeah, but it was big. It's like 6 foot by 4 foot, and it was like major big. And then Paul took over. He went over with the TM808, and he got the same reading. But here it is, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're leaving to go home in the morning. And so we took it and went back. Scott and his brother Mike, they stayed back at the house. Paul and I were the only ones that went over and talked with them. So they were in bed. They were ready to, you know, to travel. They were leaving early in the morning, and Scott was afraid that Mike's truck wouldn't make it, so he was kind of concerned, and so he needed to get back, and he didn't want to deal with being broke down on the road. Oh, and I got to back up a little bit. While we were driving, we didn't really fix the front end. It was still together, but as we were driving, all of a sudden we hear this clank, 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 and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? So we pulled over the side of the road, and you know, that yoke or whatever you call it was dangling there, and every time it was spinning, it was just clanking, and so it was like, oh my gosh, we had nothing to fix it. So Paul took it and says, let's jack up the truck. We jacked up the truck, we took the wheel off, we took the disc brakes off, we got underneath there, mainly Paul got underneath there, and hammered, and all we had was like vice grips and crescent wrench and, you know, the basic stuff. And sure enough, that guy got it off, but we couldn't get it off. So we were kind of taking a screwdriver and a hammer, and then Paul realized, oh, we got a big old bar in the back of the truck. Get that bar. So we got that bar and got it back here, and wham, wham, pop, popped that sucker off. And then we just had to do something with the dangly thing. So Paul went over to this barbed wire fence and snip, and took some wires, and we had to unbraid it, you know, and put some together and tied it up from the springs down to the spindle or whatever it was, and wired it up, and away we went. And he's like, oh, it's good for 2 years, you know. But Scott, he was like, oh, this is scary, you know. And he's like, I want to get home. So when we got into the town, he was kind of looking for a charter bus or something so that he could just jump on a bus and just abandon us and just get home. He didn't want to take it. He's had enough of this. You know, we had the bolts to the lugs sitting right on the running board. Well, his seat was the passenger front seat. That's where Scott stayed. And well, we were underneath there trying to fix things. Well, the sun was beating in on us, so he thought, yeah. He got out and jumped in the back, and as he got out, he stepped on the running board, and all the bolts and everything went everywhere. Well, we didn't know it, so he goes over and jumps in the other side and in the shade, and here comes time to put the wheel back, and Where's the lug nuts? I put them right here. They're not here. Where are they? So I had to get my pinpointer out and run it around the grass and the wheat. Oh, here they are. What the hell happened here? And I was like, oh, God, what else is going to go wrong?
Terry was going to go with you. He would have been
I was going to go.
Oh, I know.
I'm glad I didn't.
Did you get my text?
I'm glad I didn't.
I sent you a text the night before.
Oh, I think I did, yeah.
I was saying sorry about, condolences to your father-in-law and everything, but, you're going to miss a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, right. That was a trip of a lifetime, all right.
Yeah,
A bad trip.
What's funny is while we were waiting for the backhoe to come and rescue us, here comes a couple of these other Mexican kids. They were in a little Ford 150. It was four-wheel drive. They had come down and they were out. I don't know what the heck they were doing, but they had backpacks on. They were going to go spend the night. I don't know if they were going to go up there and hunt, poach, or they had their own little crop someplace. I don't know. They didn't say, but they were really friendly, and they knew Martine's son, and they were, saying hi and everything. But there's no way in hell he's going to get out either. I'll bet somebody within the next couple of days had to go look for them and pull them out.
Really?
Oh, that Tundra Tundra's a nice truck. And boy, it was loaded up with all of our gear and everything, but boy, I'll tell you what, there was so much loose rock that you were just spinning and spinning, and you'd slide, and the road was like this, and it's right to the edge of the cliff, and oh my gosh, it's like, and you don't want to go off that cliff. It's like hundreds of feet of just rolling, and you wouldn't have stopped till you got to the bottom. But
do you think maybe that's why that mine hasn't been mined too much?
Well, the older man, the man that owned it, he got health issues, and he had other mines and things that were a lot easier to mine, and so he did that. But now that he's passed away, it's in his wife's name, which is Leela's grandmother. Real sweet lady. Just I can't remember her name, but just generous and just a really nice senora lady. Just and you can just tell from your heart that she's just a really good lady. But she wants Paul to go up and take care of the thing, and going to give him like 50% or something like that, and kind of pretty much made him executive of this mine, and pretty much of all the other mines that she has around Sonora and everywhere else. So,
cool.
Paul has a lot of work to do. We'd like to go back up again in October. We're going to take a sump pump up and couple of 100 feet of hose. So
what kind of pump?
A sump pump.
I thought you said Trump pump.
No, a sump. A sump pump.
Well, that's in November is the Trump pump.
Yeah, that's November. This is October. So it'll probably still be the Trump pump. I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Anyway, so we're kind of planning on getting things ready and going up there and sucking out that water. And up on top of the shaft, you can see where they had this hook or something bolted right into the rock. I don't know they must use that as a pulley system to pull the ore up. I figured, if they can pull up 150 pounds of ore, they ought to be able to lower this 150-pound guy. Yeah. So, I got to get over this vertigo thing, and once they suck that out, there's supposed to be some really good ore down at the bottom of the shaft. So, they had a lot of people talk about how they put ore down there for special times when the hard times come, and but over the years the water table just come up and filled it up, and I think it's still down there. I don't think anyone's been in there and sucked it up, and so there's another adventure too coming up here at the end of this year. So
cool. But
we were coming back and everything was great, and we were tired wanting to get back to the States, and we get back into the border there, and we were the first in line. We thought this is going to be great. When we come across the border, they didn't check nothing. We thought maybe they'd look at that TM808. It was in a box. They kind of opened it up. We didn't have to bribe anybody or nothing,
That's unusual.
Yeah. Paul's like, bring some 20s,
That's right.
Bring some 20s so that we can pay these guys off.
Right.
But have no problem. But we sat there for, it seemed like 2 to 3 hours at the border trying to get back into the States. And Paul went over and asked the Mexican guy there, he says, what's going on? He said, oh, just settle down. He says they're taking an x-ray and everything. They're going through everybody's bags. They're looking with a microscope through everything. And it's like, well, that's fine, you know. Paul brought back a nice ore sample rock about the size of a cantaloupe. It was about 35, 40 pounds. It was, and you could just see all the silver in it.
A lot of silver.
Plus I had that silver thing that we found, or whatever it was, and I had it in the bottom of my pack with everything else. He's like, no, you know, if they find that, they'll think that we're hiding. He just took it through the back of the truck. Yeah, just leave it out in front, plain sight. Let them see it. So anyway, we sat there for a long time, couple of hours, and then finally they shot us through there, and all they did was ask for our passports. 2 minutes later, we were on our way. We don't know what the holdup was. They were probably at lunch or something. But back in '02, when we were first going to go, that's why I got my passport. And over the years, Paul asked me, he said, hey, do you have a passport? I said, yeah, I have a passport. And he goes, why did you get a passport? I don't know. I can't remember why, but it was you know, it's good till 2022. So, and then we got thinking, oh, that's when I was going to go with you the first time to Mexico, remember? But so it took 10 years, but you know, I finally made it there, and it was an experience of a lifetime, something to tell the grandkids about. But got some awesome pictures. We got a lot of pictures and a lot of neat things, and we still have a lot to check out and see. So, you know, that Jesuit church is a big one, and that concealed mine, it's supposed to have some treasure in it. And so, you know, and we haven't even got over around to the smelters yet and done anything over there, but that's all part of the claim.
Cool.
And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. But in the meantime, I'm up here at Hoyt's Peak and enjoying it up here, and Gary Holt here, and the owner has a lot of potential up here. We haven't really gotten into anything yet, but we're really close though, aren't we? Wouldn't you say?
I don't know if we are or not.
Well, you got to say that.
I'm the perpetual pessimist. Unless I don't see it, I don't spend it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of adits up here. There's just a lot of history.
We did find some descendant mine signs showing the descendants how to find a mine that we're going to look at here pretty soon. That looks pretty promising.
Yeah.
We had a geologist come up here last week, and he said that's an iron bubble that came out from the center of the earth. He says he knows exactly what it is, and he says at the 50-foot level underneath that's going to be solid gold. And he's a high-end geologist in Denver, so we're getting pretty excited about that.
Cool.
Yeah. That's about it, Terry. I guess that's.
Quinn, with that said, thank you for the story.
That's the wrap, and
That's the wrap.
That's the truth as I see it, and I stick behind it. So if anybody wants to argue with me, you know, bring it on.